While I was watching film on the NFL playoffs, I saw a lot of stuff from the Rams that really impressed me. So I decided to sit down and go through the film from their entire season and put together a cut up of all the stuff that I really liked. So let's just jump right in the film room and take a look.
We're going to start off talking about the run game, and in this clip, we're going to see a cool inside run blocking scheme that I've been seeing more and more. I'm not really sure what to call it. I'm not up to date on my offensive jargon, but what they do is they use their left tackle to kick out the 9 technique, and then they bring 3 pullers around to take care of the rest of the defensive linemen. This allows the center and the right tackle to climb immediately to the linebackers, which is really tough for those guys to deal with because as they're reading the play, they already have a lineman in their face. And then finally, they use Puka Nacua to dig out this nickel. And this is something I want to note because they use their wide receivers a lot in the run game. And we'll see later how that opens up more things for them in the pass game. And as we let this play, we see we get great seal-off blocks on the nickel and the Mike, allowing Kyren Williams to get to the 3rd level where he breaks a tackle and takes it for a 20-yard gain. In this next play, we're going to get more of a traditional trap look where the left guard pulls around to block the 4 technique, and then the tight end inserts behind him to block the will linebacker. But I really want to focus in on the right guard's technique on this play, because his responsibility is the Mike. But as soon as the ball is snapped, the will linebacker flashes in his face. And instead of sticking on him, he pops him with his right shoulder, continues to climb to the Mike, and this sets up the block for the tight end perfectly and opens up the hole for Kyren Williams to take it for a huge gain. In this next inside zone play, we're going to see another example of them using their wide receivers in very unique ways in the run game. The offensive line is going to block this like a regular inside zone scheme. We're going to have a double team on the 1 technique up to the Mike, and then a double team on the 3 technique up to the Sam. But then they use Puka Nacua to insert through the C gap to get another double team on the Sam out to the cornerback. And what I really like about this play is how they use Cooper Kupp, because he's responsible for that nickel, but in this alignment, it's really hard to get to that guy because the 9 technique's in the way. So instead of running right at him, he loops inside of the B gap, which gives him great leverage to make this block.
And this gives Kyren Williams just enough space to break it for the first down. And this is a great way to block the backside of inside zone because when the running back pushes this front side and the linebackers flow hard, it gives you a lead blocker in the cutback hole.
And this lets the right tackle seal off the front side, opening up an enormous hole for Kyren Williams right to the 3rd level. And on a separate note, if any young players are watching, remember always tackle with your head up because not only can you hurt yourself, but you also might end up spearing your teammate in the nuts.
We're going to take a look at one more outside zone play from the Rams where I really like their receiver blocking scheme. Here they're lined up in a condensed 3x1 set with all 3 receivers inside of the numbers. This causes the Lions corner to condense with the formation, which shortens the edge for the outside zone. But how the receivers block this is really interesting because the outside receivers are going to work back to the nickel and safety respectively, and then the 3rd receiver, Cooper Kupp, is going to pull around to be a lead blocker for the running back.
And that all sounds good on paper, but the way these guys execute is what really makes it happen. Just watch how Robinson and Nacua blast these guys off the line of scrimmage and then work back to the responsibilities. And this effort buys enough time for Cooper Kupp to get to the edge, get his hands on the corner, and lead the running back to a first down.
Now we're going to take a look at the pass game, and the first thing we're going to look at is how their play action scheme ties in perfectly with what they do with the receivers in the run game. Here we have a 3rd down and short, and that's important because the Packers front 7 is really keyed into the run here. And if we rewind and look at one of our inside zone plays, we see that this is the exact formation and motion that we got on this play. And just like Nacua did last time on the inside zone play, Whittington's going to insert through the C gap, act like he's blocking the overhang, and then slip out over the linebackers and be wide open down the sideline. And this really displays a great understanding of how defensive coverages work and how you can exploit them. Because the Packers are in some sort of cover 1, it might be a cover 3 match, but it's the same mechanics because as Whittington motions in, the nickel and the corner are going to switch responsibilities, meaning the corner is going to take the tight end and the nickel is going to take Whittington, treat him as a second running back. But we have to remember that that nickel also has run responsibility in the C gap. And as soon as he sees the lineman quick set and the receiver insert, he just assumes it's run, especially because it's 3rd down and 1. And as soon as the second level guys realize it's pass, Stafford's eyes bring them even farther away from the responsibility, leaving no one near Jordan Whittington. And while this next play is also a great example of how they mesh the run with the pass looks, it's really just an outstanding play by Puka Nacua. And I'll tell you one thing I noticed while watching all this film is that Puka Nacua had a ton of outstanding plays this season. And before we get back to the film, I'm just going to let you guys enjoy these for a second. Okay, now we're going to focus in on some play action zone beaters that McVay really likes to use. And it's really one concept or one family of concepts that he uses a lot against zone coverage. Here, the Bears are going to be playing cover 3, and the Rams are going to push Atwell and Nacua about 15 to 20 yards vertical down the field. And then Atwell is going to break it off inside as a dig, and Nacua is going to keep running.
And as we let this play, we see why it works so well, because the corner and the safety have to respect the vertical push from Nacua and Atwell, and the linebackers have to respect the run threat. So when Atwell breaks this dig off, there isn't a defender within 10 yards of him, and that leads to an easy completion and first down. And while this next play isn't the same concept, we're going to see why the mechanics of it work in a very similar way.
The Packers are playing the same type of cover 3 as the Bears were, and the Rams are lined up in a 3-by-1 set. And we'll talk about why that's important here in a second.
As this ball is snapped, we see we're getting a triple vertical push from the Rams, meaning we have 3 guys over the linebacker level. And once again, the safety and corner have to respect the vertical threat from 1 and 2. And since we have a 3-by-1 set, now the Mike is responsible for carrying number 3 vertical. So when Atwell breaks this dig off, the safety and corner have too much depth to make a play. The Mike is already vacated with the tight end, and the other hook player doesn't get enough depth, leaving a huge window for this ball. Now we're going to look at a similar concept, but this time versus a different coverage type. Here the Niners are running what looks to me to be cover 6, meaning quarters on the one side and palms or cover 2 on the backside.
And as we let this play, we see that we're going to get a switch release from the 2 receivers on the quarter side. This now makes the corner responsible for Tutu Atwell vertical, while the safety now has to take Demarcus Robinson. And because of the switch release, now the corner is forced to play with outside leverage. So as soon as Demarcus Robinson sits down on this curl route and the safety drives on it, it leaves all this space in the middle of the field for this post route from Tutu Atwell. Now we're going to move out of play action into the drop back pass game. And 2 things I want to focus on are how McVay uses bunches and motion to get guys open. And this next play is a great example of both of those things because we have a 3-by-1 set with the 2 and 3 receiver condensed and the 1 receiver out in a wide alignment. And it looks like we're getting cover 1 from the 49ers.
So when Atwell motions in to form this bunch, the corner follows him, but he has to get depth to be on different levels than the other 2 defenders. Because if these guys get too close,
I can't let you get close. Can you hear my
they risk running into each other when the receivers release. And because of this, when Atwell releases through the bunch and runs across the field, there's just too much distance for him to cover, and this results in a 3rd down conversion for the Rams. Here we have a 3rd down and medium, and that's important because usually offenses in these situations want to attack the sticks, meaning running routes from 5 to 10 yards to try and gain the first down. And because the Bills know this, they're going to disguise their coverage pre-snap, starting in a 2-high shell and then buzzing a safety down into cover 3.
Getting 4 guys in these intermediate zones. But unfortunately for the Bills, the Rams are going to be attacking the sideline using a concept that you'll see at every level of football called flood. And it's called that because you use 3 receivers to flood the outside zone at all 3 levels. And because the Bills are playing cover 3, they only have 2 defenders out there for 3 routes, which gives Matthew Stafford an easy decision to convert on this 3rd down. Now we're going to take a look at a couple examples of them using this yo-yo motion, which is absolutely devastating against man coverage. And I almost feel bad for talking about this play because this Lions DB gets his ankles absolutely shattered on this play. And I'm not going to make fun of him because if that was me out there trying to shadow Cooper Kupp, I'd look a lot worse. It's just an objectively hard motion to deal with in man coverage because you're worried about the guy motioning across the formation and he knows where he's going, so he's always going to have the jump on you. And this Patriots corner does a pretty good job doing it, but as soon as the ball snapped, the point receiver gets in his way and there's just no way for him to get back out to Nacua. Now we're going to talk about my favorite route combination that the Rams use a lot called snag. And I love this route combination because it's an absolute nightmare for zone coverages to deal with.
And it works especially well against the Eagles' favorite coverage, which is quarters. And that's because the flat defender, in this case Cooper DeJean, has to match this out route. And then the 2 quarters defenders, the corner and the safety, have to respect the vertical push from Nacua, which leaves just enough space inside of the hook linebacker for this snag route. And when you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford who can decipher zone coverages very quickly, it really makes this route concept impossible to guard.
But let's just talk about why that is for a second, because this little out route sits at the very outside edge of the flat zone. So if any overhanger linebacker wants to get out there, they really have to run fast. But then you have the snag route, which sits in between the curl and the flat zones, which now has to be covered by another linebacker, which is virtually impossible when they're sitting inside the box having to worry about the run game. And if you decide to cover the out route with a corner and then sit your overhang on the snag route, now you have a huge gap between the safety and the corner where the quarterback can now throw this corner route, which is by far the worst option for the defense. And that's why most schemes are designed so that they let up the flat or the snag route. But as we see in this play, that can easily end up in a first down.
Now we're going to finish up talking about the screen game and look at the different ways that the Rams get numbers advantage in their blocking scheme on these different designs. Here we're going to get a double mug look from the Bills with cover 0 behind. And then we're going to get this little comeback outside screen from Puka Nacua, but I really want to focus on how Cooper Kupp blocks this. Because since they're playing cover 0, this nickel is going to follow him. So what he does is he stems him hard vertical with a couple steps, and then he darts out to this outside corner, and because the nickel's on man coverage, he follows him out there, essentially taking care of 2 guys with 1, and then the tackle comes out late, sealing him off, leading to a touchdown for Puka Nacua. In these next 2 plays, we're going to get the same motion to the same formation, but with 2 different kinds of screens. In this play versus the Raiders, we're going to get a classic bubble screen where the Rams get a numbers advantage with 2 receivers on 2 defenders, allowing the receiver to split these 2 guys and run for the first down.
And in this next play, we're going to get a similar motion out to a bunch, but instead of having the inside receiver run a bubble screen, they're going to have the outside receiver come back and run a middle screen, slipping 2 linemen out as lead blockers and letting them do what linemen do best.
This next play is probably my favorite screen. It's definitely the most creative, where they run a flea flicker Y or tight end screen. And you've been seeing this more and more where teams are running flea flickers or reverse passes where instead of throwing the deep ball like you classically would, they throw a check down or a screen, and they actually end up gaining a lot of good yards from that. That's because when the defense realizes it's a trick play or a flea flicker, they have one of 2 reactions. Either they commit to the rush like Zach Bond and Oren Burks do here, or they bail back hard like Reed Blankenship, try not to give up the big play. And that leaves a lot of space in the short to intermediate range to complete passes.
And when you run a lot of screens, it's always good to have a few wrinkles up your sleeve to keep teams honest. And that's exactly what they do here, running this orbit motion with Puka Nacua, looking like they're running a flare screen. And as Cooper Kupp releases like he's stock blocking, he bypasses the nickel, runs a slot fade right into the hole of the cover 3 defense. That'll do it for my offensive breakdown on the Rams. I had a lot more film in the chamber. I had to make some executive decisions on what I wanted to put in and what I wanted to leave out, but I spent a lot of time on this video. Hope you guys liked it. If you're enjoying the videos, hit that subscribe button. If you have any future suggestions, just put that down in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.